The former president has been booked, fingerprinted, and has pleaded not guilty to 34 charges. We have a team of contributors and correspondents covering all of this, and we're going to start with Jessica Levinson, who is a CBS News legal contributor and Loyola Law School professor, and she joins us now. Jessica, good to see you. Thanks for being here. So let's just start off the bat. What do you make of these 34 charges against the former president?
Well, a couple of things to think about. We keep saying 34 charges, which is completely understandable, but they're all based on one crime or one part of the New York Code, which is the falsification of business records. And essentially what we're looking at here is 11 different hush money payments. And they're different counts because what we're looking at is the invoice, the ledger, and the check. Now, why do we have 34, not 33? Because I believe for one of the hush money payments, there's 2 ledger entries. So that's how we get the 34 counts. Frankly, what I'm really looking at is the reason that we're not having a discussion, Caitlin, about misdemeanors is because this was bumped up to a felony or felonies. We all knew that that was going to happen. That was expected. But what I actually expected to see in the complaint was, and here are the other crimes that we think the former president committed, because we know to get from misdemeanors to felonies, you have to show that there was an intent to commit or conceal another crime or crimes. We got that actually the most, I think, in the press conference from DA Bragg, where he said, well, I pointed to a couple of things, and then the press kind of pushed him a little bit more. And he said, we're looking at a violation of New York election law that is unlawful to conspire to unlawfully try and get somebody elected. We're looking at federal election law, potentially campaign finance violations. That's what Michael Cohen pled guilty to. And we're looking at potentially state and or federal tax law violations because these particular payments were not income that Michael Cohen, in fact, earned. They were repayment for his hush money payments, and that's a tax law issue. So we learned, in some ways, for me, I learned a lot more in the press conference than I actually did just looking at the complaint, which is relatively bare bones.
I'm really glad that you pointed that out because I was going through the document myself and noticed that they are all essentially the same charge. What you were just describing, does it matter that that is not in the indictment itself, or is that something to be parsed out during the trial period?
Well, what Alvin Bragg said, he was asked that question and he said, well, we were under no legal obligation to point to the other crimes. And he said in the statement of fact, which is true, that he said this is a catch and kill scheme. And this catch and kill scheme, meaning that a number of people, Michael Cohen, the former president, and we think David Pecker, the former head of the National Enquirer, the publisher for the National Enquirer, sat down and said, we're going to make sure that these negative stories don't get out for the purpose of influencing the election. That's going to be key for prosecutors here, for the purpose of influencing the election. Because if it's just for the purpose of making sure that this doesn't harm the former president personally or in his business matters, that's a completely different legal analysis. But do I wish that maybe we pointed to specific parts of the New York Code or the federal election law? Sure, but what the DA has said here is, I didn't need to, and that this will come out later. And I've told you in the statement of facts that there's state election violations, that there was an attempt to conceal these payments and mischaracterize these payments for tax purposes. And that's all I needed to tell you right now.
Yeah, and that statement of fact also issued with this indictment is lengthy.